The bridge of the Devastator's Edge hummed with quiet activity as Admiral Zektar reviewed the latest intelligence reports. His scaled hands moved across the biomechanical control surface, calling up holographic displays that showed grainy images of primitive spacecraft. The reptilian commander's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied what his scouts had discovered in a backwater system called Sol. "These are the humans?" Zektar asked, his voice carrying the natural arrogance of a species that had conquered 40 star systems. The images showed crude metal vessels held together with welds and covered in painted warnings. Compared to the elegant biomechanical ships of the Vorthak Empire, these human craft looked like flying scrap heaps. Commander Vexhal, his second in command, gestured to the display with a clawed finger. "Yes, Admiral. Our scouts have been watching them for 3 weeks. They call themselves humans, and they appear to be barely capable of interstellar travel. Look at this." The display changed to show a human cargo ship limping between 2 planets. The vessel's hull was patched with mismatched metal plates, and black smoke trailed from one of its engines. Warning lights blinked across its surface, and human text covered every available space. "They label everything," Vexhal continued with amusement. "Danger here, caution there, emergency procedures painted on the hull. It's as if they expect their own technology to kill them." Zektar's officers hissed with laughter. The sound filled, the bridge like steam escaping from a pressure valve. These humans were clearly a primitive species, barely evolved beyond the need for written instructions on their own equipment. "How many worlds do they control?" Zektar asked. 12 systems, Admiral, all of them poorly defended. Their military appears to consist of converted civilian ships with basic weapons. They have no unified command structure and spend most of their time fighting among themselves. The Admiral's interest grew. 12 worlds meant 12 new sources of slave labor for the Empire's mining operations. Better yet, these humans seemed too primitive to offer meaningful resistance. It would be like harvesting fruit from an unguarded orchard. At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. A human vessel had been detected approaching their position. Zektar ordered his crew to intercept and capture it for closer examination. The human ship was called the Lucky Strike, and its captain was a weathered man named Jake Morrison. He had been hauling mining equipment between Earth's outer colonies when the Vorthak scouts found him. His ship was everything the aliens expected: old, patched, and struggling to maintain basic systems. Morrison didn't know he was being watched as he checked his cargo manifest. The former military pilot had turned to freight hauling after the Titan Wars, preferring the quiet life of a merchant to the violence of his past. His ship might look rough, but it had never failed to deliver its cargo on time. The Vorthak interceptor appeared on his sensors without warning. Morrison had never seen anything like it, a sleek, organic-looking vessel that seemed more grown than built. It moved with fluid grace, unlike the mechanical precision of human ships. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Morrison of the Merchant, ship Lucky Strike. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." The response came in perfect English, though the voice carried a cold, reptilian quality. "Human vessel. You will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Morrison's blood ran cold. Pirates were one thing, but this voice belonged to something that definitely wasn't human. His hands moved quickly across the control panel, sending out an emergency beacon while trying to appear cooperative. "I'm shutting down engines now," Morrison said, buying time for his distress signal to reach Earth. "I'm carrying mining equipment, nothing valuable. No need for violence here." The Vorthak boarding party materialized on his bridge in flashes of blue light. Morrison had never seen aliens before, but these creatures were clearly predators. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales, with yellow eyes that seemed to look right through him. Their weapons were unlike anything in human arsenals, sleek biomechanical devices that pulsed with inner light. Commander Vexhal examined Morrison with the casual interest of a scientist studying an insect. The human was smaller than expected, soft-looking with pale skin and primitive clothing. His ship's bridge was covered in manual controls and warning labels, exactly as the intelligence reports had described. "You are the captain?" Vexhal asked. Morrison nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. Jake Morrison, registered merchant captain with the Colonial Commerce Authority. What do you want? Information, Vexhal replied. He gestured to his soldiers, who began binding Morrison to his captain's chair with some kind of energy restraints. Tell me about your military. How many ships do you have? What weapons do they carry? Morrison almost laughed despite his fear. The Earth colonial fleet was hardly a secret. We've got maybe 60 ships spread across 12 systems. Most of them are converted civilian vessels with basic weapons. Nothing that could threaten something like your ship. The alien commander's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. 60 ships to defend 12 worlds meant that humanity was even weaker than they had estimated. The Vorthak Empire could conquer this entire species with a single subjugation fleet. Tell me about your homeworld, Vexhal continued. How many humans live there? What defenses do they have? Morrison found himself answering despite his efforts to resist. These aliens had some kind of device that made lying impossible. He told them about Earth's orbital platforms, its small defense fleet, and the billions of humans who lived there completely unaware that aliens existed. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter was reviewing colonial defense reports when Morrison's emergency beacon reached Naval Command. The message was brief but clear. First contact with hostile aliens, location transmitted, communication cut off abruptly. Carter had spent 30 years in the colonial fleet, rising through the ranks during the Titan Wars and the asteroid belt conflicts. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. When she saw Morrison's transmission, she immediately knew what it meant. Get me General Paul Hayes and Dr. Amy Foster, she told her aide. Emergency session, clearance level black, and activate the Earth Defense Protocol. The Earth Defense Protocol was something most humans didn't know existed. It was a plan developed after the Titan Wars, when military leaders realized that humanity's spread across multiple star systems made them vulnerable to outside threats. If aliens ever found them, Earth needed to be ready. Meanwhile, aboard the Devastator's Edge, Admiral Zektar was reviewing the intelligence gathered from Morrison's interrogation. The human had revealed everything: troop strengths, ship specifications, defensive positions. It was almost too easy. 30 ships should be sufficient, Zektar told his staff. These humans have no real military, no unified command, and no experience fighting a superior species. We'll round up the useful ones for the mines and eliminate the rest. Commander Vexhal nodded in agreement. Shall we begin with their homeworld? The one they call Earth? Yes, Zektar replied, his voice filled with contempt. Let's show these primitives what happens when they encounter a real civilization. Ready the subjugation fleet. This will hardly be worth the fuel we'll burn getting there. The Vorthak officers hissed with laughter once again. In their experience, primitive species always fell quickly once they realized they were outmatched. These humans would be no different. Soon, 12 new worlds would belong to the Empire, and millions of new slaves would work the mines. As the Devastator's Edge prepared to depart, Jake Morrison sat bound in his captain's chair, listening to the aliens discuss humanity's fate. He had managed to send his distress signal, but he doubted it would make any difference. What could Earth do against creatures like these? The Vorthak fleet began moving toward human space, confident in their technological superiority and their enemy's weakness. Admiral Zektar had conquered dozens of species and none of them had ever surprised him. These humans would be just another entry in the Empire's long list of victories. But Jake Morrison's emergency beacon had done more than just alert Earth to the alien threat. It had also transmitted detailed sensor readings of the Vorthak ships, their energy signatures and their weapon systems. Information that would prove very valuable in the days to come. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison's capture, and Admiral Zektar felt confident as his 30-ship subjugation fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The journey had been routine, with his biomechanical vessels, maintaining perfect formation throughout the jump. Now they faced the primitive human home system, ready to complete what should be an easy conquest. Sensor report, Zektar commanded from his position on the bridge of the Devastator's Edge. The holographic displays came alive with tactical information as his ships spread out in standard subjugation formation. "Admiral, we are detecting multiple human vessels clustered around their third planet's moon," reported his sensor operator. "Approximately 40 ships, mostly civilian designs consistent with our intelligence reports." Zektar studied the display with growing amusement. The human ships looked exactly as pathetic as he had expected. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, and what appeared to be passenger transports were grouped together in a loose defensive formation. Their hulls showed the same patchwork construction and warning labels that had made his officers laugh weeks ago. "They're trying to protect their homeworld with garbage haulers," Commander Vex Hall observed, his scaled features twisted in contempt. "Look at them. Half of those ships are leaking atmosphere, and they're using chemical rockets for maneuvering." Human fleet was indeed a sorry sight. The lead vessel appeared to be a converted cargo ship with additional armor plates welded to its hull. Smaller mining ships flanked it, their industrial equipment clearly visible through transparent sections. Transport vessels hung back, their passenger windows dark but still retaining the comfortable fittings of civilian craft. Commander Betty Walsh stood on the bridge of what appeared to be the cargo vessel Iron Horse, watching the alien fleet approach on her tactical screens. She was a career military officer who had volunteered for this desperate mission, knowing it might be humanity's only chance. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her weathered face showed no fear as she studied the enemy formation. "All ships maintain formation," Walsh broadcast on the civilian emergency frequency. "Remember, we need to sell this performance. Make it look good, but don't get yourselves killed doing it," Captain Tony Reed acknowledged from his position aboard the mining ship Deep Digger. His vessel was one of the newer additions to the fleet, a genuine mining ship that had been hastily converted with military-grade sensors hidden inside its industrial equipment. The ship's cutting lasers had been modified, but not in the way the aliens would expect. "Iron Horse, this is Deep Digger. My boys are ready to put on a show," Reed transmitted. "These laser cutters might not look like much, but they'll give the aliens something to laugh about." Captain Sam Parker of the Transport Freedom's call checked his instruments one final time. His ship was filled with what appeared to be civilian refugees, complete with families and personal belongings visible through the passenger compartment windows. The aliens wouldn't know that every civilian aboard was a trained military operative with combat experience. "Freedom's call standing," Bide Parker reported. "Engines ready for full burn when you give the word, Commander Walsh. My passengers are eager to see some action." Admiral Zektar watched the human ships with the same interest he might show a colony of insects preparing to defend their nest. The formation was sloppy, with ships drifting out of position and communications clearly audible on multiple frequencies. These humans had no military discipline whatsoever. "Begin the attack," Zektar ordered. "Disable their lead vessels first. We want prisoners for interrogation, not debris." The Vorthak fleet moved forward with the fluid grace that marked their biomechanical technology. Their ships seemed to flow through space rather than fly, weapons already charging as they approached optimal firing range. Each vessel was a work of art compared to the crude human constructions they faced. Captain Reed's Deep Digger was the first to engage. The mining ship lumbered toward the advancing alien formation, its massive industrial frame struggling to change direction quickly. Reed waited until he was well within range before opening fire with his cutting lasers. The beams struck the lead Vorthak vessel with impressive light displays, but barely scratched the alien hull plating. Reed's weapons were exactly what they appeared to be, mining tools designed for cutting rock, not fighting space battles. The aliens responded with a measured plasma burst that struck Deep Digger amidships. The mining ship shuddered under the impact. Genuine atmosphere streaming from the damaged sections. Emergency lights flickered across its hull as Reed fought to maintain control. His ship tumbled away from the alien formation, trailing debris and broadcasting distress signals on all frequencies. "Deep Digger is hit," Reed shouted over the communications channel, adding just the right amount of panic to his voice. "We're losing pressure on decks 3 and 4. Engines are damaged. We can't maintain course." The performance was perfect. To watching alien sensors, Deep Digger appeared to be a crippled, civilian vessel taken out by a single shot. The reality was that Reed's crew had explosive charges ready to create fake damage, while his ship's military-grade hull could absorb far more punishment than it appeared to take. More human ships broke formation in apparent panic. Captain Parker's Freedom's call suddenly accelerated hard toward the edge of the system, broadcasting frantic civilian distress calls about evacuation procedures and requesting safe passage for non-combatants. "Please, we have families aboard," Parker transmitted, his voice cracking with manufactured fear. "We're not military, just trying to get our people to safety. Don't shoot civilians." Commander Vexhal monitored the human communications with satisfaction. The panic in their voices was obvious, and their primitive technology was performing exactly as predicted. Several more human vessels were attempting to flee, while others clustered around what appeared to be orbital defense stations. Commander Walsh's Iron Horse moved to shield several smaller vessels, its point defense systems flickering weakly against incoming Vorthak fighter craft. The ship's weapons were clearly inadequate, managing only scattered hits against the superior alien technology. "All ships, fall back to Earth orbit," Walsh broadcast, adding a note of desperation to her professional command voice. "We can't hold them here. Repeat, we cannot hold this position. All civilian vessels retreat to minimum safe distance." Admiral Zektar watched the rout with growing satisfaction. The human fleet was scattering like leaves in a storm. Some ships were fleeing toward the outer system, others were trying to hide behind their planet's moon, and a few were making futile last stands around orbital installations. "Textbook behavior for a primitive species," he told his staff. "They fight with desperation when cornered, but they have no understanding of real military tactics. Their technology simply cannot compete with ours." The battle continued for another hour, with human ships putting up token resistance before being driven back or disabled. The aliens used minimal force, preferring to capture vessels intact rather than destroy potential slave ships. Every action confirmed their intelligence about human weakness and technological inferiority, but something nagged at Admiral Zektar as he watched the engagement. The human retreat seemed almost too organized for a panicked civilian fleet. Ships were falling back in what appeared to be random directions, but there was something about their movement patterns that felt deliberate. "Sensor readings on the fleeing vessels," he ordered. "All ships show expected damage patterns, Admiral. Engine problems, hull breaches, systems failures. Standard results from engaging superior technology." Commander Vexhal approached his commander's position. "Admiral, should we pursue the fleeing vessels? Several transport ships have reached the system's outer boundary." Zektar studied the tactical display more carefully. The human ships that had fled were indeed damaged, trailing atmosphere and broadcasting distress signals. But they had managed to escape with remarkable efficiency for ships supposedly crippled by alien weapons. "Continue the primary assault," he decided. "Those fleeing ships are no threat to us. We'll round them up after we secure the planet." As if summoned by his confidence, new contacts began appearing on the edge of the sensor grid. The signatures looked like more human vessels, probably reinforcements arriving too late to affect the battle's outcome. Zektar prepared to order their interception when something about the sensor readings made him pause. These new ships were different. They moved with purpose rather than desperation, and their energy signatures showed power levels that didn't match the primitive human technology his fleet had been fighting. The vessels were still clearly human in design, but something about them felt wrong. "Analysis of the new contacts," Zektar demanded, a note of concern creeping into his voice for the first time since arriving in human space. His sensor operator worked quickly, comparing the new readings with their intelligence files. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion on his scaled features. "Admiral, these appear to be human military vessels, but their power signatures are significantly higher than our projections indicated, and they're moving in perfect formation." Admiral Zektar stared at the tactical display as more ships continued to appear. The fleeing human vessels had been a distraction, he realized. The scattered civilian fleet had been buying time for something else to arrive, something that his intelligence reports had somehow missed completely. The trap was about to spring, and for the first time in his military career, Admiral Zektar began to suspect that he might have underestimated his enemy. The new contacts resolved into a sight that made Admiral Zektar's yellow eyes widen with shock. Ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect military formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark gray paint of war vessels. These were not the patched civilian craft his fleet had been fighting, but sleek military ships that bristled with weapon systems. The lead vessel was massive, easily twice the size of any human ship the Vorthak had encountered. Its hull was smooth and angular, designed for combat rather than cargo. Weapon ports lined its sides like the eyes of a predator, and its engines glowed with the blue-white fire of military-grade fusion drives. "This is Captain Dan Cooper of the human colonial fleet vessel USS Defiance," came a voice over all communication frequencies. The tone was calm, professional, and carried the unmistakable authority of a military commander. "All civilian vessels, clear the engagement zone immediately. Unknown hostile forces, you have 30 seconds to withdraw from the system or face the consequences." Admiral Zektar stared at his tactical display as more ships continued to appear. The human formation was growing larger by the minute, with vessels taking positions that would surround his fleet completely. These ships moved with precision that spoke of years of training and combat experience. "How many?" he demanded from his sensor operator. 60 confirmed contacts, Admiral. All military vessels. Power signatures indicate advanced fusion reactors, and weapons systems far beyond our intelligence estimates. Commander Vexhall studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The human ships were arranging themselves in a spherical formation around the Vorthak fleet. It was a classic military maneuver designed to eliminate escape routes and maximize firepower concentration. "Admiral, we've been deceived," Vexhall said, his scaled features showing the first signs of fear. Those civilian ships were a trap. They were buying time for their real fleet to arrive. The truth hit Zektar like a physical blow. The mining ships, cargo haulers, and transports his fleet had been fighting were not desperate civilians trying to defend their home. They were military vessels disguised as civilian craft, complete with fake damage and carefully rehearsed panic communications. Commander Betty Walsh's voice came over the communication channels, but now it carried the crisp authority of a military officer rather than civilian desperation. "All decoy vessels, mission accomplished. Return to designated safe zones and await further orders." The damaged human ships suddenly moved with military precision. Captain Tony Reed's deep digger, which had been tumbling helplessly after taking a plasma hit, straightened its course and accelerated smoothly toward the outer system. The atmospheric leak stopped, and the emergency lights switched to normal operations. Captain Sam Parker's Freedom's Call changed course from its panicked flight and took position alongside other vessels that were revealing their true nature. The civilian passengers visible through the windows were actually combat troops in disguise, and the ship's hidden weapon systems began deploying from concealed compartments. "Impossible," Zektar whispered. "Our intelligence was perfect. We monitored their communications for weeks. We captured one of their ships and interrogated the crew." Captain Cooper's USS Defiance moved closer to the Vorthak flagship, its massive form blocking out the stars. The human vessel was a monument to military engineering, with every line designed for maximum combat effectiveness. Point defense systems tracked potential threats, and the main weapon batteries were already targeting the alien ships. "Admiral Zektar of the Vorthak Empire," Cooper's voice came directly to the alien flagship. "Our intelligence services have been monitoring your fleet since you entered our outer system. We know who you are, where you come from, and why you're here. Your 30 seconds are up." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that redefined everything the Vorthak thought they knew about primitive technology. Railguns mounted along the sides of the human ships accelerated tungsten projectiles to incredible speeds. The metal slugs punched through Vorthak biomechanical hulls like bullets through paper. Captain Lisa Brooks led a squadron of human fighters that had been hidden inside the larger vessels. The small craft poured out of concealed launch bays, their sleek forms dancing between alien plasma bolts with impossible grace. Each fighter was equipped with advanced maneuvering systems that made them nearly impossible to target. "Fighter Squadron Alpha engaging enemy vessels," Brooks reported over the tactical channel. "These aliens are slower than they look. Their plasma weapons can't track our evasive patterns." The Vorthak fleet tried to respond with their superior technology, but found themselves outmatched in every category. Human-directed energy weapons burned through alien armor with surgical precision, while nuclear-tipped missiles overwhelmed their point defense systems through sheer volume of fire. Admiral Zektar watched his tactical display dissolve into chaos as his fleet came under systematic attack. The humans fought with a coordination that spoke of advanced battlefield networking. Every ship seemed to know exactly where every other ship was, creating a level of tactical awareness that turned the entire fleet into a single weapon system. "Return fire," Zektar screamed. "All vessels maximum firepower. Show these primitives what the Vorthak Empire can do." The alien ships responded with their plasma cannons and molecular disruptors, weapons that had conquered 40 star systems. But the human vessels seemed to anticipate every shot, moving with predictive precision that suggested they had studied Vorthak tactics extensively. Commander Vexhal's own vessel, the Shadow Strike, took a direct hit from a human railgun. The tungsten projectile cored through his ship's biomechanical hull and destroyed the main power distribution center. Emergency systems struggled to maintain life support as the vessel began listing to one side. "Admiral, we're losing ships," Vexhal reported, his voice tight with pain and disbelief. "The humans are using coordinated targeting. Every time we try to regenerate damage, they hit the same spot again." The battle became a demonstration of human military doctrine at its most efficient. While Vorthak vessels relied on individual, technological superiority, human ships fought as a coordinated network. Data streams flowed between vessels, creating a battlefield awareness that allowed them to concentrate firepower where it would do the most damage. Captain Cooper's USS Defiance targeted the Vorthak heavy cruiser Bone Crusher with a full railgun salvo. The tungsten projectiles struck the alien vessel at multiple points simultaneously, overwhelming its regenerative hull systems. The biomechanical ship began breaking apart, its organic components unable to repair damage faster than it was being inflicted. Dr. Amy Foster monitored the battle from her position aboard the command vessel USS Liberty. Her xenobiology team had spent weeks studying the intelligence gathered from Jake Morrison's capture, analyzing Vorthak technology and biological systems. Their findings were now being put to deadly use. "All vessels target the biomechanical junction points," Foster broadcast to the fleet. "Their ships can regenerate damage, but not if you disrupt the neural pathways that control the healing process." The human fleet adjusted its tactics based on Foster's analysis. Instead of trying to destroy Vorthak ships with overwhelming firepower, they began targeting specific systems that would prevent regeneration. It was like performing surgery with railguns, and the results were devastating. Admiral Zektar realized that his fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that understood his technology better than he understood theirs. The humans had not only deceived him with their civilian fleet trick, but had also spent the time analyzing every aspect of Vorthak military capabilities. "How did they know?" he demanded. "How did they know exactly where to hit us?" "Commander." Vexhal, struggling to keep his damaged ship operational, provided the answer. "The merchant captain, Admiral. Jake Morrison. They let us capture him, let us interrogate him, let us think we were gathering intelligence, but he was gathering intelligence on us." The trap had been even more elaborate than Zektar had realized. The human civilian fleet was just the visible part of a deception that had begun weeks ago. Jake Morrison's capture had been planned, allowing the humans to study Vorthak technology while feeding false information about human capabilities. As his fleet continued to die around him, Admiral Zektar finally understood that he was not fighting primitive aliens with crude technology. He was fighting a military force that had turned deception into an art form and had spent weeks preparing for this exact battle. The Vorthak Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price in blood and burning ships. Admiral Zektar's Devastator's Edge hung alone in space, the last survivor of what had been a proud fleet of 30 vessels. Around him floated the wreckage of Vorthak ships, their biomechanical hulls torn apart by human weapons. Emergency lights flickered across his bridge as damaged systems struggled to maintain basic functions. 28 of his ships were gone, destroyed, or disabled by the human fleet in less than 4 hours. Only his flagship and commander Vexhal's heavily damaged. Shadow Strike remained operational, though barely. The Shadow Strike was listing badly, atmospheric leaks creating small clouds of frozen gas around its hull. Captain Dan Cooper's voice came over the communication channel, calm and professional despite the devastating battle his fleet had just won. Vorthak flagship, this is Captain Cooper of the USS Defiance. You are surrounded and outgunned. This is your final warning. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. Zektar looked at his tactical display, though he already knew what it would show. 60 human warships had formed a perfect sphere around his position. Every weapon in the human fleet was trained on his ship, waiting for his response. There was no escape, no clever tactical maneuver that could save him. But Admiral Zektar was Vorthak, and the Vorthak Empire had never surrendered to inferior species. His scaled hands gripped the arms of his command chair as he prepared his response. These humans might have superior numbers and better tactics, but they were still primitives who needed to learn their place in the galactic order. Human vessel, Zektar transmitted, his voice filled with the arrogance that had brought him to this system. I am Admiral Zektar of the Vorthak Empire, conqueror of 40 star systems. You face the wrath of the greatest military force in this galaxy. Stand down immediately, or we will call down the full might of our empire upon your pathetic worlds. He paused, letting the threat sink in before continuing. We have conquered species far more advanced than your primitive civilization. Our biomechanical technology is superior to anything you can produce. Your victory here is temporary. Soon, thousands of Vorthak ships will arrive to claim what is rightfully ours. The Admiral's voice grew more threatening. We know where your colonies are located. We know which worlds hold your people. Surrender now. Accept your place as slaves to the Empire, and we may spare some of your population. Continue this resistance, and we will strip every human world of life. Commander Vexhal, monitoring communications from his damaged ship, felt a chill run through his scaled body. He had served under Zektar for many years, but had never heard his commander make such desperate threats. The Admiral was trying to bluff with nothing left to bargain with. The human response came not from Captain Cooper, but from Admiral Lisa, Carter aboard the command vessel USS Liberty. Her voice carried the cold authority of someone who had spent decades making life-and-death decisions for humanity's survival. Admiral Zektar, this is Admiral Carter of the human colonial fleet. We've heard enough of your threats. You came to our home system uninvited. You attacked our people, you murdered our civilians. Your empire's policy of enslaving other species ends here. Carter's voice hardened with each word. There will be no negotiation. There will be no quarter given. And there will be no survivors to carry word back to your empire. Every member of your fleet will die in this system as payment for your crimes against humanity. Dr. Amy Foster's xenobiology team had spent the entire battle analyzing captured Vorthak communications and technology. Their findings painted a clear picture of the Vorthak Empire, a parasitic civilization that existed by conquering and enslaving other species. Every world they had liberated had been stripped of its population and resources. Admiral Carter, Foster reported from her analysis station, Vorthak records show a pattern of complete planetary exploitation. They don't just conquer worlds, they consume them. Every species they've encountered has been either enslaved or exterminated. They view other life forms as resources to be harvested. The analysis confirmed what human military strategists had suspected from the beginning. The Vorthak Empire was not interested in coexistence or negotiation. They were predators who viewed humanity as prey. Showing mercy would be interpreted as weakness and would only invite future attacks. Admiral Carter made the decision that would define humanity's relationship with hostile alien species for generations to come. All vessels, this is Admiral Carter. These aliens have shown us who they are and what they represent. We will not allow them to return to their empire with intelligence about our capabilities or the location of our worlds. Captain Cooper's USS Defiance moved into position for the final assault. The massive warship's railgun batteries trained on the alien flagship while fighter squadrons took positions to prevent any escape attempts. Every human vessel reported ready for the coordinated strike that would end the threat permanently. Captain Brooks, Cooper transmitted to the fighter. Squadron leader. Begin systematic destruction of the damaged alien vessel. No escape pods, no emergency beacons, no survivors. Captain Lisa Brooks led her fighters in a precise attack on Commander Vexhal's Shadow Strike. The already damaged vessel couldn't maneuver effectively, making it an easy target for the human pilots. Railgun rounds and missiles struck the ship at critical points, ensuring that its biomechanical systems could not regenerate the damage. Commander Vexhal's final transmission was cut short as his ship's power core overloaded. The Shadow Strike broke apart in a brilliant flash of light, its biomechanical components dying as they were exposed to the vacuum of space. There were no escape pods, no emergency signals, nothing left to indicate that a Vorthak vessel had ever existed. Admiral Zektar watched his second-in-command die and realized that the humans meant exactly what they said. There would be no mercy, no prisoners, no opportunity to escape and warn the Empire. These aliens fought with a ruthlessness that matched his own species, but with far better coordination and superior technology. "You cannot do this," Zektar transmitted, his voice losing its arrogant tone for the first time. "The laws of civilized warfare demand that you accept surrender. My crew has families, obligations to the Empire. You cannot simply murder us all." Admiral Carter's response was swift and final. "You forfeited any claim to civilized treatment when you decided to enslave other species. Your empire exists by consuming other civilizations. That ends today." The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, every weapon trained on the Devastator's edge. Railgun projectiles moving at relativistic speeds punched through the flagship's biomechanical hull from dozens of angles. Directed energy weapons burned through armor plating while nuclear missiles overwhelmed the ship's point defenses. Admiral Zektar's final thoughts were of disbelief. The Vorthak Empire had conquered 40 star systems through technological superiority and military ruthlessness. How had these primitive humans developed such advanced weapons? How had they coordinated such a perfect deception? How had his intelligence been so completely wrong? The Devastator's edge died as its biomechanical systems failed catastrophically. The ship's organic components could not regenerate damage fast enough to keep up with the sustained barrage. Critical systems shut down one by one until the vessel was nothing more than drifting wreckage. Captain Cooper monitored his sensors as the last pieces of the Vorthak flagship tumbled through space. "All vessels, confirm complete destruction of hostile forces. Conduct detailed scans for any surviving technology or escape systems." The human fleet spent the next several hours methodically destroying every piece of Vorthak wreckage larger than a dinner plate. Advanced sensors swept the battle zone for any sign of alien technology that might survive to be recovered. When they finished, nothing remained to indicate that a Vorthak fleet had ever existed. 6 months later, Admiral Lisa Carter sat in her office overlooking the bustling shipyards of Titan, reviewing intelligence reports about the aftermath of the battle. Long-range reconnaissance showed that the Vorthak Empire had sent no follow-up forces to investigate the disappearance of Admiral Zektar's fleet. More interesting were the intercepted communications suggesting that several Vorthak border worlds had gone silent, possibly due to internal conflicts within their empire. The complete loss of a subjugation fleet had apparently never happened in Vorthak military history, and some factions were arguing for avoiding human space entirely. Jake Morrison, now working with the Colonial Intelligence Service, provided the final piece of information that made Carter smile. Vorthak communications intercepts showed growing fear within their military ranks. The aliens had built their empire on the assumption that their technology made them superior to all other species. The complete destruction of Zektar's fleet had shattered that assumption. For the first time in their history, the Vorthak had encountered a species that could not only match their technology, but surpass it. The psychological impact of total defeat was spreading through their empire like a virus. Dr. Foster's analysis of captured Vorthak equipment had revealed the source of their arrogance. Their biomechanical technology was indeed advanced, but it was also specialized for fighting species with inferior coordination and tactics. Against humans who fought as a networked whole, Vorthak individual superiority meant nothing. Human Shipyards throughout the Sol system worked around the clock, building new vessels that incorporated lessons learned from the battle. The technology captured from Vorthak Rex was being studied and improved upon, ensuring that humanity's next encounter with hostile aliens would be even more decisive. Admiral Carter's final log entry reflected the new reality that humanity faced in a galaxy full of predator species. The enemy came expecting to find slaves. Instead, they found soldiers. The Vorthak Empire learned too late that humanity does not submit to superior force. We adapt, we overcome, and we ensure that threats to our people are eliminated permanently. The lesson was now written in the void for all to see. Any alien species that threatened human worlds should remember what happened to Admiral Zektar's fleet and consider carefully whether they wanted to test human resolve. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not prey. They were predators disguised as peaceful traders, and their bite was far deadlier than their bark. In the depths of space where the battle had taken place, sensors detected nothing but empty void and drifting cosmic dust. The Vorthak subjugation fleet had been erased so completely that future archaeologists would find no trace of its existence. The message was clear and absolute. Humanity would defend itself with total war against any species that threatened its survival.